6 months ago, I said Gen Z was bringing back old cars. I was right about the movement, but I was wrong about which cars. And I made that call based on what I was seeing and also part of what's in my own garage. And I was sorta right. That just wasn't the whole picture. And I'm not trying to bring back 8 tracks. My dad had a 79 GMC Caballero that had the best of the Ventures stuck in the 8-track slot. It was cool, but that's not the intent. That was a novelty. I'm talking about a real movement here. Starting with my platform of choice, the G-Body. You're never gonna guess, but the Grand Nationals and Turbo Buicks held their value. No surprise, right? But its sharp-looking Chevrolet brother, the Monte SS, actually dropped in value and desirability. Thing I'm seeing, there's a lot more LS Montes coming around too. And it also turned out that the base model stuff like my garden variety Regal were meh at best in terms of retaining their value. Same with the other G-bodies. El Caminos, also pretty meh. The base level Cutlasses, also meh. They seem to be losing value, if anything. And Hagerty, the single biggest insurer of classic and specialty interest cars, reports that the Mazda Miata quotes for those cars are up over 40%, and that is by far the single most asked about car by Gen Z. I mean, that's cool. A monster Miata sounds like fun, right? Now, as an elder millennial, I'm not going to leave the millennials out too. Millennials are looking at GMT 400, OBS trucks, 88 to 98. That seems to be the one that Hagerty is giving the most quotes for millennials. Not gonna lie, a killer OBS Chevy truck. They look sharp. I've been seeing a lot of them getting LS swapped. There again, I find it interesting. 2 different generations, both going for about the same era of vehicle. I mean, even if you could put a Miata in the back of an OBS truck. And there's one more that Hagerty data can't show us because it's too new. The Crown Vic. Cheap, V8, rear-wheel drive, parts are everywhere. What more could you love? I'm almost wondering if we're going to have a Crown Vic shortage in a few years. These things are getting bought up by the thousands and getting modified. We see guys like Cletus racing them across the country. There's other series popping up that are all getting raced with Crown Vics. And apparently the really rough ones are getting gobbled up by the demolition derby crowd. I guess they flat out work there. And that's not appreciation in value. That's people using those things for exactly what they're intended to. And that's kind of the purest form of what I'm talking about here. And what do all these platforms have in common? Probably isn't the styling, let's be honest. Now, the thing they all have in common is they're simple. Anyone can pick up a Haynes or Chilton manual on these things with a Saturday afternoon and fix just about anything on these cars. And given how many gazillion they built of the Miatas, the OBS, the Crown Vics, the parts are everywhere and the parts are cheap. And I hear someone saying, yeah, but I can't get an injection spider for my OBS truck. Let's just slap a 4-barrel intake on it and put a Holly Sniper on it. I mean, if we're gonna fix it, let's fix it right. And nothing on these cars requires a subscription login, and none of them are hard to diagnose. And that's not nostalgia, that's the criteria. Understand it, fix it, modify it, and it's still legally yours, mechanically and everything, and it's not sending your data somewhere else. And that's the whole appeal. Easy to repair and maintain, and the same argument I've been making about right to repair for quite some time now. It's just proven by the market of those that are actually buying the vehicles, not some government institution. And I'm not going to pretend this has been any easier since December. This set of MSD spark plug wires now costs $146 through Summit. And only a handful of years ago, I would pay $80 for this set. And other components like cap and rotor, granted that's MSD, but gaskets and odds and ends that you would use to finish your project seem to have just about doubled in price. And when I had started working on the heads of my El Camino, I had a number in mind. That number is blown clear out of the water, and a lot of it is parts costs. And let's not even talk about some of the lead times that have transpired recently. If you're building new engines with new parts, rotating assemblies and stuff, the lead time on some of those parts has gone way crazy. But as a direct comparison, if you try and get parts from a dealer, there's a lot of parts that are practically unobtainium. 3, 6, 9 months out, waiting on some of these parts to fix new stuff. At least I can get the parts for my old stuff. Granted, it costs a fair bit, but those dealership prices, ooh, don't even want to go there. While nothing is cheap anymore, at least I can fix this stuff in my garage with parts I can get my hands on. And the skills, let's just not talk about it. Let's actually do it. See, on stuff like this, you can verify the charging system is working with tools that you can get your hands on. And if it's not, you don't have to waste your time guessing. You can fix exactly the thing that needs to be fixed. And it doesn't take any fancy tools, just a multimeter and the understanding to actually do it. It all starts with a simple volt check. I want to know if my battery's in good shape. When we start, 12 volts, awesome. Now with the engine running, I got 14 volts, should be a little bit higher, but at least it's charging at 14. Ignore all the smoke. It's been a minute since that car has been started. I've been doing some heavy rust repair on the floorboards. But they're in. That's the truth. With a simple tool, I can prove that my charging system is working correctly. And if it's not, I can start looking at battery cables. I can start looking at the various connections and grounds and make sure that everything is the way it needs to be. And that's one thing that's so great about these old platforms. In 15 seconds, you can know exactly what's going on. No login required, no dealer subscription. You can do it yourself. About a month or so ago, a beauty channel, not even a car channel, posted a video about when her family vehicle went down, and it led her on a journey of why simple, repairable, maintainable cars truly matter. She even quoted the same statistic I used back in December that Hagerty provided. And I'm not going to pretend this is just about cars either. Vinyl record sales surpassed $1 billion, and physical music albums, they're up 8%. And the majority of the people getting into real film photography, you guessed it, Gen Z. And I'm not going to pretend that every number like this is a hard trend, but it's clear that cars aren't necessarily an isolated case here. And companies like Slate, they're still moving along. Simple, crank windows, no giant touchscreen. It's as if they were reading the comments section of my videos. I mean, imagine that, a company actually listened to what its people want. Simple, reliable, easy to use and maintain. That's market demand, not nostalgia. And someone with enough money to make bankroll that whole thing agreed. Now, only if they could get rid of the kill switches and all the government-mandated surveillance crap, right?
Last trip, 21 miles.
What?
Average speed, 78 miles per hour.
No.
Over the legal limit.
What?
Again.
No.
Hard-braking
Come on.
events, 14. I'm sorry, Eric.
Come on.
You can't be allowed to drive today.
Ah.
And you can collect vinyl as a hobby and still have your entire life online. Cars, they're a little bit different. You can't half commit to something that you depend on to get to work or get around in the world, especially when data integrity and privacy are still on the list of things you want. And that's why it hits so much harder in the garage as opposed to a record store. The car is something you have to live with, live in, and use, not just put on a shelf. So was I right about the bigger overarching movement? Yes. I thought I was going to see a bigger rise in this late 70s, early 80s stuff, but apparently that bubble has came and went a little bit. But that doesn't change that I want to be a bridge here. I want to preserve and maintain the old stuff while modernizing it a little bit with components that make sense to use. But the point is, this whole thing wasn't me being clever. There is a real movement going on, and it all comes down to the same questions. If you can't fix it or modify it, do you even own it? And those are exactly the right questions you should be asking about right to repair.